to set your like mind straight. So one of the things that IDEA wants me to develop for you guys is something called a golden ticket, like Charlie's Chocolate Factory. A golden ticket would be something like maybe 1 or 2 pages that I'm thinking of developing, and then I send to you guys via document. You guys either print it out or have to write it down, because the AP software, or I'm sorry, when you take the AP test, they're going to lock your browser. So like if you have online textbooks or stuff like that, you're probably not going to be able to access them. You're not going to be able to access other Word documents.
Damn, what? How do they lock your browser?
Yeah, anything that you access is going to come in the form of stuff that you have on paper, and that's fine. Like, it's not cheating. It's stuff that comes on paper. So I am going to give you an outline of like different, like, I'm still developing it. So if you have ideas about what you want in this, then please shoot. I think I'm going to make it 2 to 3 pages long.
What? Like everything?
Yeah. It's like, and it would be something that you could use as a resource. It would have stuff like sentence stems, like if you're stuck on how to start a sentence, which I don't think anybody here really needs. If you have stuff like, what else is a really big push? Oh yeah, it'll come with like a rubric, like a DBQ rubric, but like a dumbed down version. So like you guys can like understand, like, oh, and like go back and check and make sure that you have all the points.
I created like an outline for that. I showed them True.
Good, send it my way.
I made copies of it. Like, it's real nice. It's pretty. I put effort into it to break it down.
Send it my way, because I actually did tell Miss Jones. I was like, well, some of my students are making some. I'm gonna make one, and I'll see from those. And she actually, no AP teacher has made it yet, but we need to get it in by May 1st. And she wants to look at some by Monday. So I need, so help the dude out, you know?
Help a dude out.
I got you. I got you.
So you made your own rubric?
Send me the answers. Yeah, so I did make my own rubric, Delia, because I think the DBQ rubric for you guys, like if I just printed that out, that College Board gives you, you guys are going to realize that, oh wait, like a lot of this, like I feel like you guys it would make you more confused about what you need to do. So like, for example, the evidence points, it'll be like you get 1 point for one specific and relevant historical piece of evidence. And then you get 1 point for another relevant and historical piece of evidence. And then you get 1 point for using 2 documents to address an argument, and then 2 points for using, or 1 point for using 3 documents to address it. So like, you'll just get more confused. So I chunk them together and then give you a recommendation. And then I'm still working on it, and then stuff like that. Okay. If you're working for a 5, the only way that I'm going to teach it is using historical analogies. I think Andrea said it right, that like the AP test to get the complexity point really wants the answer that nobody wanted with the complexity point. It's really kind of dumb, and we are going to talk about next week because the stupidity of kind of standardized testing a little bit more. Getting a little risque. I'm going to ask that you guys read a little short article or watch a movie. I haven't figured out which movie yet.
Oh my gosh, I will do that.
I think there's a couple of movies that I'm looking on at Netflix that would actually be relevant for what the discussion is going to be about next week. So we'll definitely have like a pick between that. You'll have to do like the same YouTube practice that is really boring, but then you have the pick between the movie, and then we'll talk about it. It's all about like the lasting effects of colonialism. I'm thinking of I think Beast of No Nations would be a good movie, and it comes with a lot of explanation needed. I personally liked Beast of No Nations. I think it had a lot of failings though. So if you've seen it in Netflix, it's the one with like the child soldiers in Africa.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. Like the problem with it is like it's very stereotypical, and now the only thing people think that exists in Africa is child soldiers. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my gosh, my voice played back to me.
Unit 4 is, so this is just to set our straight. The big topics are Unit 1 and 2, the Mongol and the bubonic plague. Land-based empires is Unit 3. That's all the Muslim empires and the Russian Empire. Unit 4 is like where Christopher Columbus and the Europeans start taking over the New World. Unit 5, which you just read about, is Age of Revolutions. The colonies break away from Europe and the Industrial Revolution. That's the document-based question that's due today. That DBQ is hard to write. Although it does say due today, there's just a side note too. I'm getting a lot of procrastinators that are turning in stuff at like 11:59 or like 12:01 or like 4 in the morning. Like, guys, I don't check it until Monday, right? So you have the weekend. Like, if you really want to procrastinate.
But you put the due date due Friday, and I don't want to turn in stuff late.
Yeah. That's what I will say about college too. Like, to be honest, I was that kid that would turn it in at like 11:58, 11:59, sometimes 3 in the morning, and then I would fake like I lost internet access. And that was definitely me. I did that a bunch of times, actually, come to think of it.
They believed you?
No, they didn't believe me, but the paper was good enough that they were just like, eh. And also, like, professors don't really, like, you have to do it with the right professors. Like, they're not really, I guess at Georgetown, they're not very strict because they know you as a person, because there's only 10 people in the class. But yeah, I would do that all the time. I was notorious for doing that, and formatting. Like, I was horrible at formatting. I can show you guys a little like conversation I had. But like, I took a writing class my senior year for public writing, and all the other students, we would like sit around like we're doing now, and we would criticize each other's writings, and then we would have to write a final draft. All the other students would like always laugh because my formatting was always off. Like, I would always have font from like Calibri and then like Times New Roman and then like because I really didn't care. Like, I would put in hyperlinks and they were like not active. Like, I was doing it last minute.
See, that's your fault.
Yeah. But anyways, Age of Revolutions is a key point. That's what is due today. We're going to talk about just sourcing. We're just going to look at 3 samples. Sourcing using the Unit 4 sample. And then Unit 6 is European New Imperialism. That's the last unit. That's going to be covered next week. And then we're going to have a topic about that. All right. So sourcing is a tool used to analyze and critically evaluate documents. A lot of you are forgetting that it's a tool. It allows you to call BS on documents that don't support your arguments, that's supposed to be and boost the credibility of documents that do. So that's the whole point of sourcing. So what element of SOAP does the, oh, that's actually my essay. What element of SOAP do I use there?
Speaker, right?
Or take 30 seconds. Ooh, I got
okay,
my timer.
Yeah.
What is that?
Do you still have a timer, bro?
Yeah, I was told that they steal these. Side note, one of the reasons I had brown desks is because I was new when they stole Miss Jones's desk.
Hello.
Can you see that?
No.
All right, so 30 seconds are up. What letter of SOAP do I use?
Speaker.
Anybody see something different?
This is gonna be really funny if I'm wrong. Oh my god. This is gonna be really funny.
No, Dahlia, you're right, but it's kind of like speaker and purpose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's speaker and purpose. I don't use all the elements of SOAP. That's okay, because honestly, SOAP analysis is like let me hold you by the hand and teach you how to analyze something, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of more amorphous, which a lot of you picked up naturally, and you realize that it's more something that you do naturally, like you can criticize documents. You also have to consider too, guys, a lot of you, everyone here, I don't know who's logged on, but everyone here is really, really smart and can naturally think critically. There's a lot of people like on Facebook or Twitter, or you guys don't have any of that, but like on Instagram, for instance, that like believes everything that they see. And I think you guys have that skill to be able to like digest it and criticize it. So even if you don't use SOAP analysis, just make sure that you're critical and thinking critically of those documents. So I do criticize. I am saying that the motive behind this is probably to obscure the economic motives of Spaniards. So although he's touting Christianity, so am I depreciating or appreciating the value of the document?
Oh, you're depreciating it? Right? Yeah. Because you're trying to be like, well, he has ulterior motives here, so he's like trying to say something, but you know.
Mm-hmm. And it comes across that simple. So let me ask you guys a question and just take some time to think about it. 10 seconds. Oh man, I hate this timer.
I miss having the timer.
I hate that timer too. It's giving me anxiety.
Yeah, it gave me anxiety too.
Flashbacks.
Literally.
I was so sad when I went to go clean out the classroom. It was so depressing. Not least because it smelled like rats and coffee. But
yeah, your classroom always smelled like coffee.
Yeah, there was a lot of coffee, so there was a lot of bugs. So the question is, what do you think is the most common mistake? So SOAP analysis seems pretty easy here, but what do you think is the most common error that either you are making or a lot of kids are making about sourcing? 10 seconds to think about it, and then let me know.
Say it again real quick. I'm sorry.
What do you think is the most common mistake that I'm seeing in the essays that I'm grading?
Okay.
About sourcing. All right, go ahead. Anybody?
Is it like we try to do all of them sometimes, like as a checklist, or we pick like occasion too much? I don't know.
Yeah, you try to do all of them. That might be a good one. You try to do all the elements of SOAP like a checklist. What's another one?
People in the process of trying to use all the documents don't properly use those documents to support whatever their thesis is. So like they'll just source the documents or whatever, or even if a document goes against what they're saying, like it kind of like they don't really turn it in any way. They just leave it how it is because it's like it's a checklist. People want to get all of it done as fast as they can, and they don't realize, hey, did this have anything to do with your thesis? Does this have anything, like, does this support your topic sentence in any way? That's what I'm thinking.
That's exactly right, Delia and Media too. I think they operate like a checklist, and they also they leave it hanging sometimes. Like sometimes I get the purpose or like the speaker, and they're like, okay, I'm done. And sometimes the way that they source it, it doesn't even support their argument. And it's okay if not everything you source doesn't support your argument, but then you need to make explicit, like, oh, I'm talking about a counter argument here. So it's not something that it's unexpected to see. You guys are 16. You guys have a long ways to go before you guys mature, and I'm very proud to see how far you guys have come, at least in your writing abilities. It's been fun to watch. But the sourcing too has been something I've been drilling since the beginning of the year because I knew it's going to be the most difficult point to earn. And realistically, you can't get a 4 or 5 if you don't source documents properly. You need to source at least 2, but I'm recommending 3. All right, let's look at this one. This one was really good. I won't say whose student it was. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? 10 seconds.
There's nothing.
Change the slide.
Oh, Sorry, 10 seconds are up. Anything.
Maybe like, well, I don't know if I would say purpose for
I
this
would say
document,
purpose.
but purpose for like why he's doing this. So maybe it is purpose. I don't know. I'm so bipolar. Yeah.
Also, occasion, like European exploration of the New World. I don't know.
So he says that European is about the conversion of natives. However, bizarre sighting of Christianity is like an attempt to. Yeah, so I think it's good. He describes the purpose again, but he probably needs some occasion, like you said, historical context to kind of make that more clear, right?
Yeah.
This is a he.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good. All right.
I think it's pretty good.
It's a very long name.
Yeah, I know. I was reading that document and I was like, are we supposed to put his full name? I kind of just wanted to put like his
That would have given me like 20 seconds to wrote, and I would have been like, nah, I'm done.
Oh my god, I was really tired when I wrote this.
Also, sir, I'm not very good at getting the complexity point, but I'll bring that up later. I need to like talk about that because I suck at it.
Yeah, I can show you in office hours. I'll make a video on it.
Good.
Like this is sourcing right now, and then we'll do the complexity point, I think in 2 weeks officially.
When is the test again? In like a month, right?
May
Exactly
21st.
like
Y'all embarrassing me. Only 38% of you knew.
Wait. So the AP
when the
test
test
May
was.
21st?
Yeah, but
we
honestly,
said it's on May 22nd.
Bro, that's what I thought too.
I was like, imagine taking the AP test the day before the last day of school.
Yeah.
Also, the last day of school is going to be the most anticlimactic thing in the world. It's just going to be like, okay, bye guys, and then we delete Google Teams.
That's what I was.
So sad.
That's what I was saying to Andrea. I was like, what are we even gonna do? Because like the whole week, last week
I
is like
know.
either
We were
testing
supposed to
or
have a
just
party.
like fun.
Party and like be on
We
our
would go to
phones all day
Cinderman,
and watch
remember?
movies in class.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty sad too because it's going to be even more boring for you guys because what are you going to do?
What are y'all gonna plan for us?
We're just gonna do nothing. Well, to be fair, we have the ACT, don't we? Or is that on hold or something?
On hold.
Is
Okay.
it realistically going to happen?
It's June, y'all.
I just bought the book and everything. It like came to my house yesterday. Yeah,
Study
no,
it.
I know.
Got it, girl.
But now it's like, and then Mideo was like, ACT is probably on hold, and I was like, oh no.
You can still study it though.
Yeah.
I just don't want to.
Yeah. We all need to study for standardized tests.
Yeah, it's actually really true.
Yes.
It's so hard though. I don't want to.
They're kind of boring. They're very hard to study for. But yeah, I would still study for it because I don't know. I'm pretty sure the ACT is canceled, but better safe than sorry.
I guess we'll just never be tested on anything in our lives ever again.
Except for some reason, AP World History is apparently the most essential subject this year.
Yeah, they're like, we don't need to do ACT, the thing that they use for like college and stuff. We need to do the AP history.
Yeah, not math, not math, reading, or English. No, world history.
Can you believe Gutierrez quit just because she couldn't prepare for STAR and then STAR didn't even happen? She did.
Dog, we talked about this, bro. Like,
where he has
Dahlia, wait till the recording goes off, my friend. Oh my god.
That wasn't it, it's true though. It wasn't like any jab at her because I really like her, but like, it's just really sad. I was gonna say it's just sad for the ELA teachers in general, just They pretty much the entire year they're just preparing for STAR, and then it didn't even happen.
Right? Isn't that a funny way? That's a funny.
Ironic.
Yeah. And now I feel like I'm STAR tested.
Kind of.
STAR test is way easier than AP test.
Huh?
STAR test is easier than me. To me, AP test by a long shot. But
Oh yes,
sure.
it is,
STAR
but
test
it's the only way that schools get ranked.
With AP test.
Well, sorry, no, they get ranked for both, but like the STAR test is the most critical for the ranking because it's considered like the bare minimum skills you need in life. And it's expected that 90% of them pass, the students. Do we manage that? I think we get about 85%, 86%. But
No.
a lot of the kids are not expected to pass the AP test. And the way that colleges get ranked, I don't know if or high schools get ranked. The high school ranking system is as messed up as the college ranking system. But the high school ranking system, the way they get ranked is based on AP participation and IB participation. So,
IB, oof.
for instance, just upper level participation. And so that allows a lot of IDEA schools were in the top in the country. IDEA San Benito is in the top 10% in the state of Texas because everyone takes an AP class. And that's a big part. That's a big educational incentive.
I told a friend about that we do that. How we have like everyone is pretty much like required to take the AP classes, and she's like, "Why would you do that if some kids aren't even prepared to be in AP classes?" And then I was like, "Oh, true."
Well, it's mainly for it's for several reasons. The logic behind it, which I can't say whether I agree or disagree, is that kids are better off in AP classes anyways because even if they're drowning, then maybe they'll, I don't know,
be ready for college.
Be ready for college eventually because maybe they'll be drowning a little less by senior year.
Okay.
You guys know that Offset song? Do anything for clout. That's what we're doing.
Oh my gosh.
And I think there's some
we do anything for clout.
truth to that because in my high school there was a lot of the standard classes. They just watched movies. Like the AP classes were really competitive in my high school, but like if you took a standard class, like it was standard college prep and then AP, or pre-AP then AP. If you took a standard class, dude, you were like cruising through life. You were watching Dora in Spanish. You were watching 21 Jump Street in English.
Well,
like, you had a good time.
Great.
That sounds fun. What the heck? We're being deprived.
Yeah.
You're being deprived.
It was really
We're being
fun.
deprived.
Even in AP classes, they were really problematic sometimes too, because the AP teachers didn't necessarily teach towards the test. It was more like, here's a lot of homework. You have to do all of it by next week. It was a lot of book work and like memorization and PowerPoint. But yeah, that's my experience.
Oh, I forgot we're doing the.
Yeah, me too. So let's just do this one, and then we'll talk about. We'll skip the other one, and then I think everyone. Yeah, let's just do this one. So, what is right? What is wrong? Or what elements of soap are they sourcing? First of all.
Is it like speaker?
It is speaker. Yeah.
I couldn't.
Ooh, I like the word recant. It's pretty.
No.
Anything? What did they do right, and what did they do wrong? Not that they did anything wrong.
Okay, that's it.
Agreed.
Looks pretty good to me.
I think it's good.
I did sense with purpose too with the speaker. It kind of connects both of them. Why the speaker is important.
Yeah. So I miswrote parts of this too, so I messed up. But I think one thing that I'll be careful about is like this essay was really good. Like it was fantastic. I think this is like a curse of knowledge part because I know that in this person's mind, they know that a Spanish missionary, the fact that it's a Spanish missionary is significant because it's a Spaniard criticizing Spaniards. But sometimes it's like a curse of knowledge situation where they are so knowledgeable about the situation, they're just like, okay, dummy, make the connection, right? It's a Spanish missionary criticizing a Spaniard. So that's what makes this document more credible. But you have to spell out your logic for lack of sounding like a law school teacher. You have to spell out the logic. Otherwise, because you have to consider who's grading this, right?
So you have to assume that the person reading it is kind of like not aware of everything that you are?
No, I wouldn't say not aware of everything. Like, they are AP World History teachers, right? But I would just say that AP World History teachers come with unique biases, right? AP World History teachers aren't necessarily going to see you put a Spanish missionary himself and then make that connection, right? I think you would just have to spell it out a little bit more in this particular essay. So a Spanish missionary himself, and so maybe say just in a couple more words, and the fact that he's criticizing Spaniards as a or something weird like that.
Okay.
Just spelling it out more explicitly. It kind of also throws a like highlight, like this is how I source. All right, that's good. Before we get into the video, we're just going to talk about next week. So next week's topic, we're going to talk about European imperialism. We're going to be we're going to discuss like the effects, the long-term effects of European imperialism, new imperialism in Africa and Asia, because one of the big features of AP World History is that Europe takes over the world. And we're going to talk about it in terms of its short and long-term consequences. This is a famous image, or this isn't actually a famous image. The sad part is it isn't famous. But this is a recent scholarly book called King Leopold's Ghost. So it describes and recounts the tremendous abuses by the Belgian government of Africans, right? So frequently women were enslaved and the men were forced to go into the jungles to cultivate rubber. If they didn't bring back adequate rubber quotas, the Belgians would chop off the hands of their children.
Wait, what? Their children, not them?
They would chop off the hands of that. They would kill them eventually if they were persistently not doing that. But they wouldn't want to chop off the hands of the father because they still need him to go collect rubber.
Oh, okay.
So that gets at kind of how abusive colonial systems were. Belgium is often considered an extreme case, but a lot were not that much further from Belgium. They were very abusive. We'll talk about the long-term consequences of it in terms of world development, and we'll have a discussion centered around that. So the last thing we'll do is we'll just have a quick discussion on this, and then we'll end. One of the things that took place in Unit 5, which is the DBQ that you're writing a DBQ about revolutions that are taking place in the Americas that's completely different. And then the Industrial Revolution happens, and then people start getting really anxious, and a lot of ideologies like Marxism come into play. So there is like, a stereotype, and I think it is maybe has merits, that a lot of elite universities and like fancy universities, like the most read book in universities is Karl Marx's The Communist Manifesto. It's the most assigned book. So there's a lot of criticism like, oh my gosh, these liberal universities are just raising a bunch of communists. And I understand that, but I would just say we kind of need to dig down into Marxism a little bit more. I think it might be cool to incorporate it if you have a DBQ about like the effects of, the Industrial Revolution. You can talk about Marxist ideology, and then even talk about Unit 7 and 9 concepts of like how Marxist ideology led to communist revolutions, etc. That would be a fantastic essay. Marxism and Karl Marx is an interesting subject. I created a YouTube video on it explaining pretty much the gist of it. we're going to watch this, and then we're just going to talk about it. You're going to talk about it. I'm going to shut up, finally, and tell me what you think. So, was Karl Marx right? However vague that means. I am not a Marxist, by the way. I feel obligated to say that because I do drive a Nissan Sentra.
I do drive a Nissan.
I do say stuff like,
I think that would be a good time. And that would be a good time to stop.
Debaucherous. One of my best memories was at Georgetown, and there was a guy that came up to me and was like, wow, we had such a debaucherous good time last night. And I didn't know what that word meant.
I know what that means, but also that is such an inappropriate use of the word. Like, that does not, he's just having big words. He's just trying to use big words.
No, he said it appropriately, but I've just never found it in my soul to say, like, I want to sacrifice my, dignity and use the word debauchery in a sentence. But he did.
If it sounded natural, you could have just said, we had a really good time last night. You didn't have to say, we had a debaucherously good time last night. I don't know. I've never seen it used in a way to describe, like a gross amount of something. I know that's what he's using it for, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it was, yeah. But, like, I feel obligated to then say, like, oh, I'm not a Marxist. Like, this all relates. There's a stereotype on campuses that is somewhat legitimate.
Wait, who said that word?
Huh?
Never mind.
Sorry, hold on. You can't play audio on this computer, so you have to.
Karl Marx is often described as one of the greatest thinkers of the 19th century. His writings have inspired revolutions and generated centuries of fierce debate. Born in Prussia, now Germany, in May 1818, Marx believed that capitalism, which was in its infancy at the time, had serious flaws. Marx claimed that in pursuit of profit, capitalists would encourage their ideology: work is good, leisure is bad, and material things will make us happy, embracing mass production, depriving workers of job satisfaction, at the same time exploiting the working class. He became involved in the Communist League, a small group of intellectuals who wanted to abolish the class system and spread wealth equally. Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1847 with his benefactor Friedrich Engels, laying out the Marxist vision of a society where wealth is distributed evenly, property is owned publicly, and education is free for all. But Marx was little known and little read at the time. When he died in 1883, only 11 people attended his funeral. After his death, societies flourished. Based on the theory of Marxism came communism, the realization of a stateless society where all are equal. Communism became a global movement, but the utopian ideal of a fair and equal society failed to materialize. Communism tyrannized and impoverished its subjects and slaughtered them in the tens of millions. Today, capitalism dominates the world. But many of Marx's criticisms have never been more relevant. Today, the global disparity between rich and poor is striking. Marx predicted that capitalism would lead to the rich getting richer and the poor staying poor. He was right. He also predicted that capitalism would lead to boom and bust economics. Marx predicted that capitalism would lead to globalization, and that a handful of firms would have huge market dominance. However, Marx underestimated the ability of capitalism to make everybody richer by making products much cheaper. Since the 1980s, the number of people in absolute poverty has fallen by about 1 million. He also got wrong the capacity of capitalism to reform itself by creating welfare states that redistribute wealth through taxation. Although there is a lot to learn from Marx, his solution was far worse than his
I think a lot of you get caught up in, I think one thing that we could at least aspire to do. So Marx kind of offers the greatest critique of like the world as we see it today, right? A lot of the elements that he criticized and he predicted, they're prevalent today. You can agree with some of those elements and still not be a Marxist. I mean, I think that's okay, right? We all see that. And I would say, like, technically, some of us operate under like Marxist perspectives. When you study sociology, if you do that in college, there'll be something called like you have to use like a Marxist framework to attack this problem, or like a different framework.
So you had to do that?
I would just say that like use I think as humans we have a tendency to think in terms of like a binary, or like capitalism and communism. Capitalism works, or communism didn't work, so it's bad. Marxism is stupid and evil. And you see in the Marxist video that I make for you guys explaining his theory and then his contributions, that that ideology of Marxism probably had one of the biggest impacts on AP world history, on world history today, right? It's still used to legitimize countries' regimes. Probably the most powerful country in the world is China, or going to be the most powerful country in the world is going to be China, and they have a capitalist economic system, but they still claim to be communist, which is very interesting. So what kind of elements do you think that Marx got right? Let's rephrase the question. And where do you think his ideas are wrong? And then,
so like in theory, what do we think that he did right?
what
do you mean?
Criticisms do you think he makes that are valid? Like, what critiques does he make in the video that are valid?
Well, I remember it was something like it causes like that big economic imbalance, like it causes class problems and stuff. Like the really rich are super rich and the really poor are really poor, and that sort of thing.
Okay, and do you see that in the world today?
Yeah. Remember, it was like the top 1% has more money than the bottom 50%, and it's like,
good,
or something like that.
All right, go on.
It's even bigger than that. It's like the bottom 70%.
Didn't he also predict like the whole like, well, it's kind of a monopoly, but not really a monopoly, but like a bunch of just businesses have most of the money and most of the power, and like the people are just kind of forgotten. He said we're gonna turn into like more technological advanced, right? And we're gonna forget people.
Mm-hmm.
So we are turning into more like technological advanced, like you've seen with like Walmart and Target, like self-checkout areas. Those are people's jobs.
He said globalization would be a bigger thing, right? Yeah.
So the invest in tech is really interesting because in Walmart, just like 2 years ago, there was cashiers, right? And now there's automation. And so one of his biggest reasons for claiming that capitalism was unstable was that his claim was that capitalists, meaning wealthy people, would invest in machines because they would eventually be lower cost on the long run. But this would only benefit that firm. But on the whole, if everybody did it, it would hurt the economy and destroy employment. And so there's a lot of anxiety right now about automation. Automation of truck drivers. Truck drivers are like the #1 job in America, I think, for people that don't have a college degree, is truck driving. There's going to be automated cars soon. So what does that mean for the stability of our system?
How about we don't replace truck drivers and we make just casual use cars automated? I don't know.
But companies are greedy. They want what they want.
That's true. That's true. It would be probably more like they would make more money if they just made everything automated.
What do you think about? So in the video, it didn't say this because The Economist, believe it or not, The Economist is a little bit right-leaning. It's a British publication. It's very right-leaning. So I didn't necessarily say this, but one of his critiques against capitalism that I think was very, and when I'm saying critiques against capitalism too, I want you to think about like critiques that he said that apply to the Industrial Revolution, right, and the movements of the Industrial Revolution, but also apply to the 21st century. But one of his was that I thought was very moving was commodification, meaning like capitalism has a tendency to turn things that are super valuable, like art, even like love, into commodities. And I guess we haven't seen that yet, but we've seen that in like I've watched Maniac, and it was like really bad on
What's
Netflix.
Is it a show?
Yeah, it's a show. It's a TV series with Jonah Hill and Emma Stone.
I
But
love
it shows like people selling their friendship. Like people will get in the movie or in the TV series, they'll sell their friendship. Like, oh, I need a friend because I'm so lonely and inadequate. I'm just going to go online and buy a friend. You've seen like a lot of dystopian novels that focus on like this commodification. In like Her, the movie Her is also on Netflix, where he buys an operating system and he falls in love with his operating system. Yeah. Does that make sense? Like, he thinks that capitalism has a tendency to devalue stuff that shouldn't have a price tag on it.
Oh, like people.
what?
Yeah, like people.
Oh, people. Oh yeah.
Like
I
interaction with people is priceless.
how everything. Did you hear about? I don't know if this is relevant or anything, but it was. I think, like China helped like depreciate the value of caviar or something. Did you hear about that? Like they started lowering the price of caviar, and it was actually pretty good for the environment, like what they did. But what happened is like a bunch of American articles were coming out saying stuff like, see, now we're losing luxury items like caviar thanks to China. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I thought it was interesting how they saw the how caviar was becoming like pretty much common over in China. And then everyone else saw it as like, oh no, we lost caviar as a luxury item.
That's very good, Delia. That's what Marx would call, and then I'll because I want to hear what Emma wants to say, but that's what Marx would call fetishism, right? You kind of attach value to stuff that are like, why do you attach value to it? Like, for instance, gold and silver, they're not very valuable intrinsically. What do they do? It's just something that we as, that I guess in European exploration, to make the AP World History link, just said was valuable. And then once they found a whole bunch of it, it caused all sorts of problems because it became less valuable. So it does very much, like, valuable things in a capitalist society depends on them being scarce and inaccessible. And go ahead, Emma.
Emma!
What?
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. What about what does he get wrong?
I feel bad because if I don't find something wrong, then people are gonna call me a Marxist. I'm scared.
Dating as a Marxist.
Help! I'm trying to think of something.
Then maybe the rise of capitalism. Like it's been predominant.
Yeah.
It
hasn't really faltered, right?
No.
No, I think he thought. Yeah. Well, we don't know how long. Like, what was the time frame he was thinking for like capitalism eventually ruining the world? I don't know.
That's an interesting point. What about, let's say, right now in the coronavirus crisis, in a truly capitalist society, if you couldn't make profit, then it was good that you went out of business, right? Is the government letting that happen?
No, I don't think they don't want people to go out of business, right?
No. So is the United States a truly, purely capitalist society?
No.
No. It's supposed to be businesses that don't do well fail. But I think people are trying a million things to keep stores open. Because
And
people
so,
see it as like, if the store closes, then that's gonna hurt the Dow Jones or something, but in the long run, businesses that are supposed to fail should fail, because then the ones that are like good for the economy stay open. I don't know, you know what I mean?
yeah, like the airline industry, right? So if the government buys um, the airline industry, which I think they did. I haven't even checked. That's how out of touch I've been. But I think, at least in 2008, when there was another financial crisis, the government literally owned like major car producers. They owned General Motors and Ford for a while. U.S. taxpayers owned them because you bailed them out, because they were suffering economically. And so pure capitalism would say, well, if you're suffering economically, then good, because maybe someone else better will come along. But regulated and modified capitalism would say, yeah, for the most part, you're on your own. But when it comes to times that are really tough, we can step in there and help you, because we know that you're going to be a really, I phrased it horribly, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. Anything else that you think he got wrong?
I
I was
forgot.
thinking like he wanted government to have control over production, right? But then
Yes.
I'm thinking of like Russia and the Russian Revolution and how that didn't turn out very well.
Very good. So you have control of production. So he would say community ownership, right? And that's so utopic. It's a utopic idea, if that's even a word, idea that becomes a dystopia, right? As Andrea pointed out, like the Russian Revolution was so beautiful. People were saying, "Oh, it's all about equality. It's all about egalitarianism." And what really happened is the people that facilitated the government, because the government had control over the means of production, they just became really rich and really corrupt. They kind of betrayed the ideals of the revolution, and pretty much that remained consistent for all communist governments. People became really rich and really corrupt. So maybe there's something about the human, something innate within humans that makes it impossible for them to maybe own the means of production and facilitate the ownership of the means of production and actually equally distribute to everyone. Maybe there's just something inherently selfish about us, and that's been a critique, right? I think people are very self-interested, and that's what kind of drives capitalism.
I was going to say earlier, like, do you think that Marxism and communism failed because it just couldn't get it like a footing, or is it because we as humans are like reject it entirely, or like it's just so ingrained within us to not adhere to that?
Well, so there is some, and this is a little bit off the point, but there is some, this is why psychology and social psychology is so interesting, especially for all the future economics teachers out there. There's this great book called Nudge by Richard Thaler, which marries behavioral psychology with economics. But there is something that is ingrained in humans that probably has an evolutionary basis. Where our conceptions of justice are actually, once you're not being watched, people are so down to do like really heinous and non-just things. I think there is a social psychology that says that people, for the most part, are self-interested. There's a few different cultural variations where they're more altruistic, meaning they're more likely to do stuff for their community. But usually self-interest is very dominant in a lot of models that are used for like social scientists that try to study how societies work and how they allocate resources. And that's actually what you'll learn about in microeconomics senior year, whoever's teaching that, that the whole class of microeconomics is based on one assumption, that people are self-interested. And that assumption has allowed microeconomics to explain a lot of the world. So yes, people are very self-interested, and there's a lot of social psychological research that supports that.
Okay.
That was a long answer, but
I was going to say right now,
so
I was following very, very carefully that sentence. I mean that little answer.
That was in the slide.
There's a lot of cool social scientific research out there that is so cool. And now I mean, like I really hope that I am teaching economics eventually, because it's so cool. Government, not so much.
Do you try to pull in like your economics jargon into these recordings? So when you show them, you're like, oh, I guess I kind of know a little bit.
Yeah, I guess I know it, right?
I miss the classroom setting.
The most nerve-wracking interview I've had was when I interviewed not for the school, but for like a teaching assistant job at Georgetown, and they gave me like a test, or they gave me like, okay, how would you explain? So I would have different scenarios where I would have to explain like economic concepts to students, and then they had like students come in and like I would test with them individually. So it was very nerve-wracking because it was a lot harder material than like something that's in your basic microeconomics class, and it's a lot harder to teach. But yeah, I think that like I'm super excited to do it. Like I want to teach it.
Okay, nerd.
Yes, I have.
Don't worry, you'll get it. You'll get it.
No, he won't.
No, we won't.
Who said that? Rude.
I got a meeting with Black Collar, so I'm gonna let you guys go. But have a good day.
What?
Okay, Hombrowski.